Right, well, welcome back to my weekly yarns. For those of you new, my name's Barry. For my regular viewers, you will have noticed the absence of videos and a weekly yarn from last week. Well, what happened here, you say? On the 7th of November, Deb took ill and she had to go to bed for a couple of days. Followed by me on the Wednesday. I think on the Monday or Tuesday I did the valve chest video, got it edited, got it released. Wednesday I was emailing back and forward to Lance in Australia regarding the valve chest and some hydraulic issues. And in the Wednesday afternoon didn't feel particularly well, so went to bed as well. Wednesday night was not a good night. So on Thursday we decided, both of us, to take COVID tests. Took a COVID test Thursday morning, both positive for COVID. So Thursday, Friday, most of Saturday, both of us just in bed completely knackered, tired out, unbelievably tired, to the point where you just could not even be bothered to get out of bed to go and make a cup of tea, get a drink, anything. 14 months ago, Deb was diagnosed with breast cancer. Had an operation, went on medication after radio, and ever since then we have been extremely cautious on who we mixed with. Always wore masks outside, always used hand sanitizers, except for when we were like with our immediate family. Because the tablets that Deb were on reduced her immunity levels, and the hospital did stipulate, in fact they gave her a letter with a phone number on saying that should she get COVID or test positive for COVID, she was to ring this number. They would invite her into hospital for some antiviral injections, which would stop the progress of the problem. She did that on Wednesday morning. No, sorry, she did that on Thursday morning after the test proved positive. Heard nothing back. So for the last 11 days, we're basically being cooped up in the house, stewing, doing nothing, just absolutely could not. So tired, couldn't be bothered to do anything, couldn't think straight. Had like, I've never had like brain fog before, where you find it really difficult to think sensibly and in line, if that makes sense, from one event to the next. Just couldn't do it, so didn't even bother trying to put videos together or anything like that. As I say, we got the hydraulic valve done, we got it issued, did a couple of emails, went to bed, that was it. Over the weekend we recovered to the point where Monday, Tuesday I was able to get up. Deb was still pretty shabby, but I was able to get up, do a few little jobs. For instance, the spring and the new seat turned up for the TCU valve. Went on the phone, paid Stuart for that, because the previous spring, if you remember, was for the pressure relief valve, so I used it in the pressure relief valve. So on Tuesday morning I decide I'll go into the garage, I'll fit this spring, I will take the needle valve out, because it was a lovely day outside, it was absolutely beautiful. So I thought I'd take the needle valve out, straighten the bend in the needle valve, get that done, put it back together. Whole intentions were to even take a few still photographs, just include in the yarn, so we could show you that we'd done it. Went out there, couldn't even be bothered to take the pictures. And I mean, you've seen me put that into the TC. This is the old spring and cover. You saw me put that into the valve the last time. That takes all of 5 minutes. If you're lucky, takes 5 minutes. You don't need any tools, you just need an oil can. So I went out, we did that, we pulled the needle valve out, popped it in a vise, heated it up, straightened that out as best we could. There's a tiny little bend right on the end of the taper, and I didn't want to tackle that in case in the way that we're straightening it, that we would damage the sealing performance of that needle valve. So I've just left that the way it is, but the spindle is now straight, and that's in the valve. We also pulled out that, which is the little dowel which keeps the pad lined up underneath the valve chest. Well, forgetting the name of it. It's the pad that the little rock arm rocks up and down on. That was all of 15 minutes, right? Came back in the house, got one of those little finger machines that you put on to test your blood oxygen level. Blood oxygen level down to 85%. Well, as I say, that was it for that day. That was as much as I was going to be doing then. So this morning, again, takes a couple of COVID tests this morning. I'm still proving positive, but a very, very thin, faint line. Deb's looking clear this morning. We'll probably test ourselves again tomorrow, or we might miss tomorrow and do Saturday. What's the day? Thursday. We might miss Friday and do Saturday. I don't care, my birthday was in the middle of all that lot, wasn't it? Never got to see a soul. Got birthday card off my wife, that was it, because obviously nobody else can come close to you. I don't want to infect anybody else. But the photo competition, my son won the photo competition. I need to go on and sort that out online. But the good news is that when I get better, he can buy us all McDonald's for a treat. In the previous yarn, we had a little bag with the ball in, and the single, see if we can, the little aluminium disc was with the ball. Now then, if you go back to yarn number 6, put a link up here for you, go back to yarn number 6. In the yarn, I point out that from the previous video, which was removing the hydraulics and everything from the axle, you could see on the back of the valve chest that little aluminium disc. And remember, the two brass choke nuts were down in the sump, weren't they, in the bottom of the axle. Now bearing in mind, I had, and if you watch the video of us taking the axle to bits, you see me remove the dump valve very carefully. You see us pull the spring out very carefully, looking, because I know there's going to be small items either attached to the spring or the bottom of the dump valve, and I didn't have it drawn at this point, or inside, so I'm taking things to bits carefully. That was the only valve we took to bits. We didn't take any other valve to bits. So when we found the little aluminium disc on the back of the valve chest, I thought it was something that I had missed, something that I had dislodged while removing them from the axle. So I always associated the aluminium disc with the dump valve. Never dawned on us that this had been sitting on the back of the valve chest for ages. So on the whole process, from that point forward, on the whole process was the fact that that was the contents of the internals of the hold valve. Everything else was still in its place. Then I got a drawn for the valve, which wasn't a particularly good drawn. In fact, still pieces are missing. Like, for instance, my drawn, here we have the TCU spring with this tiny little little seat washer thing that sits on top of the valve, that's not shown on the drones at all. So in my mind, that disc came out of the whole valve, and it wasn't until that Campbell had sent us some pictures up of that little plate. He had made those. He had made his little own plate, the ball retainer. He had made those himself because he can't get a hold of them down in New Zealand. And he sent us a picture of the retainer plate with the ball sitting on top of it, and I'm thinking to myself, that's strange. Surely that's out of the bypass valve. So I got a better drone, had a look around, got a better drone, and that's when I realised, and this was the night before I started putting the valve back together, and I had all the parts ordered, but I just ordered the parts as per their names. So I'd ordered a new one of these from Stuart, along with the ball that sits underneath it. No, sorry, the gauze. That was from the bypass valve, so there's the gauze goes under there. That little washer with one hole goes in on top of it, and then the brass retainer nut comes down on top of that. So I just ordered them as per their item number or their part number as per this drone. So, and in the video when we're reassembling it, I failed to show you clearly the parts that I'm actually putting down the hole. All you can see is the back of my hand, basically. So I thought I'd better explain to you, because Shane emailed us, because Shane had obviously thought I'd put in the wrong parts in the wrong hole. So Shane emailed me, and as I say, between Shane, Campbell, myself from the night before, I had sussed out that retainer, the 3-hole retainer plate, goes with the ball into the hold valve, not the pressure relief valve. So I thought I'd better explain that to you. As I say, circlips turned up, put that in, that's in the chest. Cleaned the dowel up that holds the abutment plate onto the bottom. And we've got our spare parts to go into the dump valve, the hold valve, once we get it put back in the tractor. So I think I'll take you for a walk around. It'll not be today, because today is absolutely disgusting outside. It'll probably be Saturday morning. Other little jobs are getting done this week. We'll reset the tappets, put my tappet cover back on. So what we did was just manually set the engine top dead centre number 1, intake clearance is 10th thou, exhaust clearance 7th thou. And what you do is set the engine top dead centre number 1. You can obviously set inlet and exhaust on number 1 cylinder, but you can also set number 2 cylinder exhaust, number 3 cylinder inlet. Then rotate it 360 degrees, so you're coming up onto what the handbook classes as top dead centre exhaust stroke, which probably you and I would call top dead centre number 4, but they call it top dead centre exhaust stroke. Then you can set obviously inlet exhaust on number 4 cylinder, and I'm reading this off the book because I've got it written down here, and then you can set exhaust on 3 and inlet on 2, and that's your entire system set up there. So we did that, top bolted on, that's another little job ticked off. So over the moon with that. So as I say, another little job we're getting done, alternator. Can you remember when the video of starting the engine, I said I might clean the alternator up and put it on so we can get the fan belt to drive the water pump? Well, tested the alternator and it wasn't working. Took it to bits, took it all to bits, because with alternators, there's only three main components of an alternator: your rotor, your stator, and your electronics, your rectifier and your voltage regulators. That's all there is, right? 9 times out of 10 it's the electronics that fail. Very rare does the rotor fail, very rare does the stator fail. It's nearly always the electronics, the pack on the back that fails. One of the diodes give up for whatever reason. So I thought I'd take it a bit, see if we can get a pack for it, maybe get it put back together. But I'll see, I'll show you around it, we'll see what's what with it. Huh? Right, so I'll give you a quick walk around, show you what's been going on. Let's see, we've got our cover back on the engine there. Did the tappets, put the cover back on. Need to probably touch the nuts up a little bit with a paintbrush. So as you can see here, alternator stripped out. Got the rotor. That's just an electromagnet, energized through the slip rings from the ignition coil originally. And then you've got your south poles and north poles for your magnet. Oh, there's Betty. Morning, Betty. And your coil that looks like one when it's actually three. 1, 2, 3. 3 separate coils spaced at 120 degrees intervals. And the 3 coils, that's one end of the 3 coils. The other end's here. And it's all the 3 coils common together. And that's your electronics pack on the back. So that's your 3 components, that's it. That's your lot. The bit of wire sticking out the back here, I've inserted, I don't know if you can see in there. Let's have a look, can you get in there? I've got the wire running through there, keeping the brushes suppressed. And that's a legitimate hole by the manufacturers to keep so you can, it'll come with a peg in so that when you go to build the alternator, because that bearing is bigger than the slip rings, so you've got to suppress the brushes so you can get that in and then pop the brushes out to hit the slip rings. I might do a separate video all on that, on how it works and things like that. Dead simple, dead simple. The bearings are good in that. Looks a bit rusty, but tatty because it's been, God knows what happened to it before it came to me, but it's just been sitting underneath my shelves in here. Right, valve chest, as I say. The pack of circlips came, so there's a circlip in that one now, circlip in that one. Next job is just to, and we changed out the spring in there, so the new spring and the new little seat is in there. So the next job with that is just to get the lift put right on here at 103 thou and 0.9 to 1 millimeter on here. Strange, isn't it? They've got this one in thousand, this one in metric. Strange that. And as I say, the pin, we took the pin out, heated it up, gave it a little bit of straightening. Job's a good one. So you can see down here, this is all nice and dry now. We're still draining. I've got the drain on here for the water. Just let some water. There's a bit there. Wait a minute. Let's get that cleaned up. What I'm going to do this afternoon, is disconnect the top hose from up there, and I'm going to pour some antifreeze in because there'll be water still in the block and I don't want the block rusting inside, so we'll put a bit of antifreeze in there. Right, let's have a look around the other side. The lift pump all nice and dry now. Solved all of our leaky problems down there. So we've got a box of bits here. When we pull the selector valve back off the back, to put the valve chest on. We can reach in, pop that in place, the bypass return pipe, and we've got our bits and pieces in here, a abutment plate and our little bits that need to go into the valve. Connecting rod needs to go on. As I say, the steelwork's coming, so we should be able to get my gauge made on Monday, if it arrives Monday. Hopefully we'll start and get this put back in here probably Tuesday. Might get the video out here by Wednesday. Eh? Be nice, wouldn't it? Get it all sorted out. Eric from California, USA, asked where we were getting all the information from about the Davy Brown tractors, because he seemed to be struggling to find good, reliable information. And I said I had a handbook. Well, that's the handbook that I've got. Okay, it's an I&T shop manual, and it's the number is Charlie 203, and it's for the GI case and Davy Brown tractors. It covers 770s up to 4600s. Okay, the only thing is though that after that is a section on 990s. So as you can imagine, that for a 990 is not a lot of information. There is some vital information in there. However, you do need to go away and then find more information, because the information is sparse in here. There are things that are not talked about in depth. Like, for instance, a common phrase in here is disassembly is self-explanatory, and it isn't. Sometimes it really isn't self-explanatory. I mean, I'm from an engineering background, and there's times that once you've took something to bits, you look and think, that's not the most obvious way to take that to bits. But it's a starting point. I think that's what I'm getting at with this. This is a starting point. I get a lot of good information from me viewers. I'm either busy with a job or I'm going to be busy with a job. I'll put a question out there. People will see us doing things. Shane from America, Lance, Australia, Campbell from New Zealand, they'll email me and they'll say you need such and such to do that, or you need a certain tool, or you can get your parts from this individual, or this company has got the parts in, because a lot of companies will have parts on their website but they're out of stock. Whereas the beauty of YouTube is that you're not one person looking for parts. You have a lot of people from around the world looking for parts, and a lot of people come back with common solutions, like Campbell solutions for pulling the internals out of that valve. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I like about YouTube. It's teamwork, everyone working together to get these tractors back up and running. So this was the drone I was working off when I was ordering parts from Barclay Williams. So you can get the name of the component from here. I've got another drone in the house where it actually has part numbers on. I think I've showed you it in a previous yarn or a previous video. It was specifically for the bypass valve, wasn't it? Or was it the hold valve? Might have been the hold valve. But it was specifically for one of the valves, and it had the part numbers in, Davy Brown part numbers. So where I had part numbers, I ordered part numbers. Where I didn't, what I did was I emailed Stuart at Barclay Williams a copy of that, and it's got the item numbers on. And I simply asked him for, like that one there, sorry, this one here, item number 6A. Right, and that's how. That was the only way I could, because there's nothing in there that would tell you what bits were. Now, it was this drone that then alerted me to the fact that there is the little aluminium disc with a single hole in the gauze retainer, and that one is the one with the 3 holes in with the ball underneath it. What this doesn't show here though is the spring and the dump valve on the top. It also doesn't show here the TCU valve. It just shows the spring. It doesn't show the tiny little seat that comes with the spring that goes in there. So even though they are in official manuals, you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful what you're doing and research as much as you can, find out about as much as you can. But Eric, as I say, that's a good starting point. But look around. If anybody out there has got questions, don't be frightened to put them in the comments. Ask the wider community out there, people who, all my viewers, ask the viewers your questions, because as an individual, none of us have probably rebuilt an entire tractor from every single nut and bolt upwards. But collectively, I'm convinced we have. I'm convinced out there, whatever job you're doing, someone else has already done it, and they can give you their experience, like Campbell did with me for that valve chest, and other little bits and pieces of information, tiny snippets that you think are totally irrelevant. And as I've said this before, it might just be that tiny bit of information that actually gets somebody else's tractor back up and running for them. Right, well, that's it for this week's Weekly Yarn. Thank you very much for visiting. As usual, your time is appreciated when you come visiting us to see what we're doing. Hopefully, the next couple of days, things will improve. We are waiting for some steel to be delivered. Obviously, with us being ill last week, I couldn't get the brain fog. I didn't take the opportunity to order the steel to make the gauge for setting up the valve chest. So I just did that. What's the day? Thursday. I just did that on Tuesday. Right. Steel's not coming till Monday. So we'll get the tool made Monday, Tuesday, and we'll get the valve chest done as soon as this weather picks up and we can get some space in the garage to get the job done. So hopefully in a couple of days we will have a video coming out to you guys about the completion of the valve chest, which will be setting the spool up with the DTI, putting the chest onto the selector, setting the rock shaft, the little rock shaft underneath, setting the clearances on the rock shaft to the spool valve and to the TCU valve, popping the whole assembly into the tractor, putting the bits in, and then putting the dump valve in. Job done. Hopefully. We'll see. Hopefully that's going to get sorted out by at least Friday next week. We should have all of that done. Everything should be rocking for us. Sorry about the delay, but we will get there. We'll get there. Right, well, that's it for this week. Short and sweet. Not a lot got done, but for obvious reasons. But as always, we appreciate your time, and I really do appreciate the concern of some of my viewers who emailed me asking how we were. Shane, John, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Lance, thank you very much for the mention in the end of your kangaroo stew. As I say, your concerns were greatly welcomed. But hopefully we're on the other side of it now and we're coming back up. Thanks very much. Yes, all your support is greatly appreciated. We do realise everybody's got really busy lives, and to take time out of your lives to come and see what we're doing is brilliant. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, now remember, don't overthink it. It's just nuts and bolts and a box of paracetamol. See you in the next one. Stay safe. Take care. Bye now.